Good afternoon, everyone. We'll be starting in the next 2 minutes. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you once again for joining us today at the Center for Postgraduate Studies at Rhodes University. Today's workshop is on analyzing qualitative data, which takes into power as a contribution starting from the one last week, where we were discussing the collection of qualitative data. Joining us is the Emeritus Professor Chrissie Boughey, who has a long history as a researcher in the field of higher education studies. She has always drawn on qualitative data analysis for her own research and has supervised more than 25 doctoral theses to completion that also used qualitative analysis. Before her retirement, she was Deputy Vice Chancellor at Rhodes University and Dean of Teaching and Learning at Rhodes University, but managed to maintain a position as a researcher even though she carried significant leadership. Emeritus Professor Chrissie Boughey has been supporting the engagements of the Center for Postgraduate Studies, and we are very lucky to have you, Chrissie, in order for us to engage in the scholarship of research, how to do research support, as well as necessary engagements throughout our research journey. Thank you very much for joining us once again and for taking the time to facilitate today's workshop on analyzing qualitative data. Over to you. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Asipe, and good afternoon, everybody. Asipe, am I a co-host? Can I share my screen? If not, could you make me one? There you go. I'm okay. Thank you. So, yeah, welcome to this workshop on analysing qualitative data. I have a, let me put my video on so you can just see me for a minute. I do have a PowerPoint presentation, but I will, as I'm looking at the PowerPoint as it's showing, I will try to keep track of anybody who puts their hand up. So I'm going to be talking, but you're very, very welcome to stick your hand up and interrupt me. It's not a lecture. So please, if you don't understand what I'm saying, just stick your hand up. Alternatively, you could try the chat box, which I'll also try to monitor. But it's often quite hard to do the two things. It's probably better if you stick your hand up because I get a little signal across my screen if you do that. So I'm going to stop my video and I'm going to share my screen. There we go. You should start to see it now. Okay, and as Asipe said, I've always used qualitative data in my own work. So I've got a lot of experience in using it and in supervising students who use it. So I really hope I can help you make some headway with where you want to get to in your studies this afternoon. Now, I want to begin with something very obvious, if you like. When you do research, your job is essentially to try to make knowledge claims. Okay, so what's a knowledge claim? Well, a knowledge claim is a statement about what you, the researcher, believe to be true. But importantly, every knowledge claim has to be supported by evidence. So hold that in your head, because I think it's really important. Your role as a researcher is to make these knowledge claims, but you can't make them without the evidence for the claims. And that's where the data comes in. So you'll be using qualitative data to support these statements about what you believe to be true. And of course, what you then do in a thesis is you build these claims into a bigger argument overall throughout your thesis. It's really useful to think of your writing as making a series of knowledge claims. And so when you write, can you sort of hold in your head, well, what knowledge claim am I making? Even if you're writing a literature review, you're still making knowledge claims. But the difference in the literature review is that you're using the literature as the evidence for the claims you make. In a literature review, you're not expected to say, oh, well, so-and-so said this, and so-and-so said that, and this other group of people said something else. No, you're expected to make sense of the literature, to make these knowledge claims. Claims about what you believe to be true based on the literature. And then the references, that's what the references are. The references are the evidence for your claims. But in the rest of the thesis, you're also going to be making these knowledge claims. So for me, this concept of a knowledge claim is really, really important. So hold that in your head. A knowledge claim is a statement about what you believe to be true. You need evidence for the knowledge claim, and the evidence will come from your data. Okay. So when you use qualitative data, you have to adopt a very different approach to what people will often call scientific research, the kind of research that's done in the natural sciences. So it's not about translating comments or statements into numbers. So it's not about saying, for example, 56% of the people I interviewed said this and 44% said that. Because if a majority believes something, that doesn't mean that something is true. It's not like democracy. It's not a majority vote here. So although you can give indications of the number of people or the proportion of people in your data who are saying particular things or who believe particular things or so on, or the amount of times you observed something, it doesn't mean that because a lot of people said something, it's necessarily true. So you have to get that out of your head right away. If you do use numbers like this, it's only descriptive. It's only describing the shape of the data. It's not allowing you to make any knowledge claims, any truth claims on the basis of your data. So hold that in your head as well, that in a way, when you use qualitative data, you've got to let the numbers slip back. You can use them to describe the shape of your data, but they're not going to allow you to say something is true. And that's what you have to do. You've got to try and prove by bringing in evidence in the form of your data. You've got to try and prove that something is true. Is everybody okay on that point? Anybody got any questions on that point about the need to be wary, suspicious of numbers when you're doing qualitative research? Okay.
Sorry,
Yep.
I couldn't.
Sydney, talk to us.
Yeah, so, I'm just asking this in relation to my research. So I was analyzing, so I had a focus group, and the participants, in addition to the interviews, they were sort of rating on a Likert scale how they feel the curricula includes certain aspects, and I was specifically looking at climate change. And then I have to analyze that on a Likert scale, and it involves me using numbers. And do you think so? So when I analyze the results on how they rank, then I was trying to look at the responsiveness of the curriculum based on what the participants they were rating, because they had gone through the curriculum. So I'm being forced to use a score analysis to analyze the responsiveness based on the data that I was provided. But it's part of qualitative research. Although, sorry, go ahead.
Who were your participants?
The participants are students and lecturers.
Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, but the tool I'm using also sort of shows the assessment criteria, which has some percentages of if the responses are in this percentage, then it means this. If it is in this range, it implies this, such kind of thing. But but it's qualitative. Okay. But also that one it's also backed by, I'm backing that with the responses, the interviews that I conducted after that. They sort of speak to what they ranked. So maybe that, I'm just trying to say that I'm using numbers, but also backed by the responses as evidence of what they were saying and explaining why they ranked it that way.
Okay, I think you're doing what I'm saying, Sydney. I think that you're using the numbers to give the shape of the data. You're not necessarily using the numbers to prove that something is true.
Right, yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. That's all right. It's okay to use numbers to give a broad sort of overview, but the numbers aren't going to allow you to make what I've called a truth claim or a knowledge claim. Okay, because even if you've got, I don't know, 80% or 90% of your respondents saying something, what about the 20% or the 10%? Do you just disregard them? You can't. So the numbers will only give you the shape. And I think that's what you're doing. But you're going to have to substantiate, you're going to have to support those knowledge claims in a different way. And that's what I'm hoping to show you how to do, what to do that in the rest of the workshop. Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else got any questions about those numbers? Do you get the idea of numbers giving you the shape, the broad shape of the data, if you like, but they're not going to allow you to prove anything in qualitative research, because you're coming to this research, it's not, you're not using it statistically, you're not using inferential statistics in any way. It's not like the scientists where they use numbers to actually prove. They've got a different orientation altogether to knowledge and to knowing, to probably what you have when you're using qualitative data. But let's see if I can explain that a bit more as I go along. Okay. When we do qualitative research, we tend to rely heavily on theory. Okay, theory is important in qualitative research. And in fact, we have theory in all research, but certainly in the social sciences, which tend to use more on qualitative research, to draw more on qualitative research. Theory is foregrounded more. It's there in the natural sciences, but theory is more evident in the social sciences. So what is theory? Well, theory is like a pair of glasses, okay? A pair of glasses that you use to improve your vision. When you wear your theoretical glasses, when you put the glasses on, you see the world differently, okay? I wear glasses. I have to put my glasses on as soon as I wake up in the morning because I can't see without my glasses. So when I put my glasses on, I see things that otherwise I wouldn't see. So your theory is exactly like those glasses. Your theory allows you to see the world differently. It allows you to see things that you wouldn't otherwise see. Okay? Now, when you use theory to analyze qualitative data, you see the concepts in your theory, because every theory consists of concepts. And the theory also describes the relationships between concepts. So your theory has these concepts in it, and it gives you an explanation of how the concepts are linked together. So when you put on those theoretical glasses, when you use your theory to look at your data, you see the concepts and the relationships between them. If you didn't have the glasses on, you wouldn't see the world in this abstract way. The concepts are abstractions. They're not concrete. You might look for concrete things which give you a clue to the concept, but the concepts themselves are abstractions. So you put your theoretical glasses on and you see the world in this more abstract way, and you start to see things that otherwise you wouldn't see. Now, what's really important to remember too is that when you choose a theory for your research, your theory will have within it a theory of reality. It will be based on a theory of the reality. So the person who developed, or the people who developed the theory, will have worked out what they think reality or truth is, and they'll also have worked out how reality can be known. And they will also have worked out how concepts in the theory relate to this reality. Let me just slip back now to the natural sciences, okay? The natural sciences are sort of the dominant way, if you like, of looking at knowledge and knowledge production and research. So what the natural scientists tend to believe is an absolute reality independent of human thought and action exists. So the reality of the world has got nothing to do with me, Chrissie. It exists independently of me. No matter what I think, no matter what I do, that reality exists independently of me. And that my role as a researcher is to discover that reality. Okay? So reality is independent of me, and my role is to go out and try and discover it. And the way I will set about discovering it is using empirical methods. So I'll measure, I'll observe, I'll conduct experiments, and so on and so on. And I'll probably also use inferential statistics in my measurements and observations. Okay? So in the natural sciences, it's natural scientists as a group tend to all share this view of reality. So they're a very harmonious group. They're all happy working together. So they don't usually have to explain this theory of reality, but it is actually in their work. And another interesting thing about the natural sciences is that I would argue, when they talk about theory, they talk about it actually in the literature review. It's not overt like in the social sciences, where you often write a chapter which you entitle theoretical framework or something like that. Theories in the theoretical work in the social sciences is different. It can draw on any number of theories of reality. So, for example, some theories are relative theories, relativists. So they believe that as human beings, we construct our own realities. So my reality is different to your reality. And some will believe that my reality as an older white woman has been shaped by my own particular history, my status as a white woman, and so on and so on. So I will see things, and my gender. So the way I will see the world is very differently to the way a young Black man might see the world. So any theory that you choose will actually be based on a theory of reality. But I'm very keen on my students to actually try to identify the theory of reality and talk about it, because I think it's pretty important. But not all supervisors will do that. But believe me, any theory in the social sciences ultimately is based on ideas about what reality is and how reality can be known. Okay, so you're going to use a theory, but in that theory, there will also be a theory of reality. And that's quite important to consider as you go on and you look at analysing data. Now, what happens to a lot of students is that they write an entire chapter on their theory or their theoretical framework if they bring one or more theorists together. Okay? And they may or they may not write, under the guidance of the supervisor, they may or may not write about the position of the theorist with regard to reality. But as I've said, nonetheless, that position is there. And the positions on reality, they're discussed in research handbooks and research design methods and courses. And I've just put some of them down there in that list. Realism, relativism, empiricism, critical realism. They're all theories of reality and how it can be known. So, important point is the theories that you're using, you might be using one, you might be using more than one. They ultimately will draw on a theory of reality. I suppose one of the questions I have for you is, have you connected the positions on reality you've encountered in research design methods or courses with the theory you're using? I'm sorry, I've got a typo there. So you've probably all done a research design course, and people have used words like relativism, realism, empiricism, and so on and so on. But have you connected those words, the stuff of the design courses, with the theory that you're using? And do you know what the position is in the theory or the theories that you're using? Because if you don't, it's really worth thinking about that. Because remember, your job as a researcher is to make these truth claims, these statements about what you believe to be true, what you believe to be real. But if you don't know what reality is, if you don't know what truth is, what you think truth is, and it's got to be consonant, it's got to be in agreement with what your theorists are using, then how are you going to make those truth claims? I think that's pretty important to think about that. Doesn't matter if you're doing PhD or if you're doing masters, I still think it's pretty important to think about it. Does anybody have any questions? Any comments? If so, stick your hand up or just speak. It's quite a complex thing that I'm trying to explain. And it took me years to understand this. So as a novice researcher, I'm not surprised if people in this workshop don't get it. Nothing to be embarrassed about if you're feeling that this is difficult stuff. Okay. The other thing is that many students write this theory chapter, and it can be thousands of words long, but then they promptly forget the theory when they do their analysis. It's like they take their glasses off, they leave them on the table, and then they continue doing whatever they're doing without looking through the glasses. And what they often do then is, instead of looking for the concepts in the theory in their data, because that's what you have to do, you have to look for the concepts in the theory in your data, they look for something like themes. What's the theme? I don't know of any theories that draw on themes, but as a result, they have lost their position on truth or reality, because in technical terms, these things that they start looking for, called themes, have got no ontological status. They've got no status in a theory of reality. But the key point in this slide is that when you start looking at your data, what you need to do is to use your theory to look at the data. And what you will do in order to do that is draw on the concepts, to try to see the concepts in the theory in your data, and then to join or to link those concepts up again, using your theory, because your theory will describe the relationship between the concepts. Okay, so if you want to start analyzing themes, I'm going to say that you need to ask, how does a theme relate to the theory you're using? And the big question is, if you start identifying and writing about themes, have you mislaid your theoretical glasses? Have you left them on the table, and are you then stumbling about the room without those glasses? And as a result, you're not seeing things that you need to be able to see. So those glasses are really, really, really important. Okay, so as I've said, a theory consists of concepts, and those concepts are linked together to provide an account of something. So a theory might find an account of the way society works, an account of the way the family works, an account of the way gender works. A theory may provide an account, an explanation of the way learning happens, of the way reading happens. There are reading theories, and so on and so on. But in any theory, you've got these concepts, and those concepts are linked together to provide this explanation of the way something works, something functions. And rigorous qualitative researchers will use the concepts in the theory. They'll see the relationships between the concepts in the data. And this is also an important thing. So that they're using their theoretical glasses. They're looking at the data through their theoretical glasses. And what they start to do then, as they start to talk about their data and write up their data analysis, is they use a particular theoretical language as they write their thesis. So you write your thesis, if you like, or particularly your data analysis chapters, you write them using the language of your theory. So they'll use the concepts of the theory and of the theory and the words to describe the relationships between them in their writing. And that final bullet, it's just a tip. When you consider that theories push you into using a particular theoretical language, then you can't start using your theoretical language until you've explained it in your theory chapter. So if you like, your introduction to your thesis, it's got to be written in everyday language. You can really only start using your theoretical language once you've explained your theory. Okay, any questions on that point? Your theory pushes you to speaking about the world, to writing about the world in a particular way. But you can't start using that language, obviously, until you've you've explained your theory. And one of the things I find myself writing as a comment on my student scripts is, will your examiners necessarily understand this term when they're using it in the first chapter? Because I haven't yet explained the term, even if they put a list of definitions in. So that's just something to remember, but that's a bit of a digression. Okay, so you're going to analyze your data using the concepts in the theory, and you're going to try and see the relationships between concepts in the data. Everybody got that? Any questions? Does it make sense? Those theoretical spectacles are so important. Okay, now I'm going to give you an example. Let's see if I can make it clearer. I'm going to draw on a theory that I use a lot, and my students use a lot, and some of my students are in the workshop today. I see Tanya's here and Ida's here and Temba's here. So I'm going to use Archer's social realism. Margaret Archer is a sociologist, and her theory draws on the concepts of structure, culture, and agency. Now, a lot of other theories in the social sciences also draw on those concepts, but Archer does as well. And basically, Archer's theory links these concepts together to provide an account of the way change happens or it doesn't happen. Okay? How does change happen? Or why does change not happen? Why do things get stuck? Okay? So what Archer's theory does is she argues for a particular relationship between those concepts of structure, culture, and agency. So she says structure and culture have powers and properties. Okay? Structure, let me just explain very simply how Archer would understand structure. A structure is a mechanism that regulates access to the goods of the world. So if you think about education, that's a structure. Because if you got education, you're going to get a better job, aren't you? You're going to earn more money. You're going to buy a fancy car and a house and so on and so on. Gender is a structure. Men and women, as we know, they are able to access things more or less easily. Some jobs are more closed to women than to men, and so on and so on. So if you think of a job as giving you access to the goods of the world, then you can see how the structure of gender will play out in that. Race is another big one. In South Africa, the colour of the skin is really still important. It's still impacting on our society. So it's functioning as a structure. So a structure gives access to the goods of the world, regulates access to the goods of the world. Culture is a belief system, and agency is people. Okay? So what Archer is saying is that structure, these mechanisms that give us access to the goods of the world, and belief systems, they have powers and properties. She's saying beliefs are very powerful. Okay? But she's also saying that people have powers and properties. People can exercise this power that they have. But what she also says is that the powers and properties of structure and culture are only activated when agents, people, exercise their own personal powers and properties. So, for example, you've got a belief system sitting there. Well, a belief is nothing unless a person activates that belief, takes it on board, and acts on the basis of the belief. Yeah? So you can see how the person in Archer's view is the powerful one because they have the power to pick up the belief or to ignore the belief. In a similar fashion, if you think of an employer and they've got a woman and a man and they've got one job and they think, oh, this young woman, she's going to have a baby, so I'm going to choose the man. They are exercising their agency, they're exercising their power to activate gender. All right? It's true, men can adopt babies and men, whatever, they are able to give care to children. But the dominant belief system would probably be, oh, well, the woman's going to be pregnant. She's going to actually give birth, and so she's going to have time off work, and so on and so on. So you can, in Archer's view then, structure and culture are only activated when agents exercise their own powers and properties. So this is a very simple account of Archer's social realism, and I've had to do that because that's what I'm going to use to analyze a bit of data, and I wanted to use theory to analyze my data, so I had to explain the theory. Okay, so basically there's my theory. Now when I look at a piece of data using social realism as my theoretical glasses, I'm going to look for structure. I'm going to look for mechanisms that distribute access to the goods of the world, such as race, gender, social class, education, the finance system, money, geography, and so on and so on. I'm going to look for culture, sets of ideas, and I'm going to look for agency, people acting. Okay? I'm going to look for the way agents exercise their powers and properties, because Archer says people have powers and properties. And I'm going to look for what happens when the powers and properties of structure and culture are activated. Okay? That's my particular theory. Your theory, a different theory, you're going to look for different concepts. And you're going to look for different relationships. It all depends on the theory or theories that you're using. Okay? So if I were using a different theory, if I were using Bourdieu, somebody else, it would involve looking for different concepts and relationships between them. Okay, here's a bit of data. This is a real bit of data. One of my students, she's now graduated, she said I could use it. What my students was looking at was children learning to read. Okay, she was interested, and she was looking at children in poorly resourced schools in Jersey. So she was asking these children about their reading, and she, because of her understanding of reading and how you learn to read and so on, she was interested in particularly in what happened in the home. So what happened in the homes of some children? Now she interviews this young man. He is a young man, and he used to read a lot. Okay, so she knew he was a good reader. The teachers identified him as a good reader, and the teacher, he'd also done reading tests, and the test shows he was a good reader. But she was interested in how he got to be this good reader. Okay, so speaker one is my student, the interviewer, and she said, and tell me, where do you get books, like your main source of books? Now here's the young man speaking. He says, we usually buy books. And frankly, my sister makes us buy our books for some reason. Yeah, like she always makes us save to buy our own books, because she always takes us to Book Bargain. I think he means bargain books in the Pepper Grove Mall. She always takes us to Book Bargain or something like that. And then we'd always pick out books that we like. You know, get a cute little sibling moment and pick out books that we like. And then she'd make us pay for them. Do you understand? Like she'd make us pay for them. So I think that's another way. She says she's helping us save and use our money in a smart way. But I mean, buying books is a lot of money. And my student said, yeah, I really like your sister. Okay, so it's a tiny piece of data. It's small, and it comes from a bigger interview. The interview was much longer than this, and my student had about 8 learners in her study, and this was one of them. So remember, she's interested in how these learners from what she assumes are poor homes because they're going to a poor school in Josa. It's not one of the big schools in town. So she's interested in how they get to read as they read. Okay, little bit of data. Okay, so I'm going to begin, first of all, by identifying agency. Remember, my concepts that I'm looking for are structure, culture, and agency. So I'm interviewing action, the way people, I'm identifying the way people act. Okay, examples of actions, what people did. Okay, so I could have actually coded that. We usually buy books. Okay, but I began here. My sister buys us our own books for some reason. She always makes us save to buy our own books because she always takes us to Book Bargain or something like that. And then we'd always pick out books that we like. So they choose books they like. You know, we get a cute little sibling moment and we pick out books that we like. She'd make us pay for them. Do you understand? She'd make us pay for them. So I think that's another way she says she's helping us save and use our money in a smart way. But I mean, buying books is a lot of money. Okay. Now, there's an important lesson in this because I put this presentation together this morning and I decided to use this bit of data as an example. And I did a bit of initial coding looking for agency. And my initial coding is in red. Okay. But as soon as I looked at the screen again now, I can see I missed something. Remember, I'm looking for action. I'm looking for people doing things. And immediately you can see here, I've missed that. We usually buy books. I should have coded that red. And that's why it's important to go through your data multiple times. You're not going to only be able to go through it once. You're going to have to do it more than once. I missed something. You'll miss something. But anyway, suffice to say that on this slide, what I've done, I've tried to identify the concept of agency in the data. So agency is people acting, people doing stuff, okay? And as I've explained, I missed one there on my first pass through the data. Can everybody see what I've done? Does anybody have any questions? Okay. See, there's something in the chat. Okay, I think not a question. So let's move on. Now remember another concept in Archer is culture or belief system. Culture is a belief system. And in social realist research, culture is usually understood as being discursively constituted. That's a technical word, okay? But let me explain. Discourses are sets of ideas that exist in language, and these ideas sort of clump together. They hang out together. The ideas hang out together. But when those ideas get together, they can allow us to do some things and they can stop us from doing other things. They enable and constrain. So in social realist research, when you look for culture, you're looking for discourses, these sets of ideas, and they're just ideas hanging out together. They might not always hang out together. One idea might drift off and join another group, but at the moment, they're hanging out together in this group. But when those ideas come together, they're quite strong. They've got power, providing that the agent draws on them. They've got power. And they can stop us from doing things and they can push us into doing other things. So in my analysis of culture, I'm going to be looking for these sets of ideas. Okay. And here I go. I've tried in this, it's the same extract. I'm now trying to look for these discourses, these sets of ideas, and I've colored them in blue. Okay, so I'll explain this in more detail on the next slide. So my sister makes us buy our own books. So there's something, a belief about you've got to buy your own books. And it's the children buying their books. It's the younger members of the family. It's not the big sister. This big sister was working, incidentally. It's not the big sister buying the books. She makes the younger children buy the books. Yeah, like she always makes us save to buy our books. So there's a set of ideas there about you need to save your money. And when you've got money, books are a good thing to buy. And then we go on. And then we pick out books that we like. You know, we have the cute little sibling rings and pick out books that we like. So in this one, I've identified a set of ideas that choosing a book is important, and probably connected to that is the idea that you've got to enjoy the book that you're reading. You don't want to read a book that you don't enjoy, that you don't like. And then she'd make us pay for them. So is this something to do with this idea of paying for books? What's that about? Is it a belief system that if you pay for a book, you actually pay for a book, it's more valuable? She'd make us pay for them. So I think that's another way. She says she's helping us save. So clearly in the belief system, in the sister's belief system, and she's trying to get the children to share it, she believes that saving money is good. And then when you've got that money, you use it in a smart way. Okay? And buying books is a lot of money. It's got something to do with the value of books. Okay? Now, I've done that many times. I've done this many times. I do a lot of discourse analysis. But basically, what I did was I just colored in blue the ideas that stuck out for me. They stuck out. They jumped off the page for me. I might not be able to make these discourses work. You might not be able to make any of this analysis work. You'll only be able to make the analysis work as you do it more and more, and you interview and you analyze more and more of your data. But this is what jumped at me when I looked at this tiny extract. Now look at what I did with it. So I've identified, and I've called it D1, discourse number 1, a set of ideas that say books are to be valued. Books are valuable. Books are to be valued. Okay? They are of value, not only monetary value, but they're good things. Books are good. Okay? This young man, he talks about books in monetary value, but behind that, if you're spending your money on books, and books cost a lot of money, then surely it's the idea there is the book itself is a valuable thing to have in your house, in your life. So I've identified that set of ideas, and I've just put it down. I've given it a name. Discourse number 1, the books are to be valued discourse. And here is my evidence. I've cut from the data and I've pasted into the second column the evidence for that set of ideas, for that discourse. Okay? Going on to the next row, I've said there's a set of ideas, a discourse about the need to save your money and then spend the money wisely. So you don't just, as soon as you get money, you don't just go and spend it on stupid things. You save the money and then you spend the money wisely. That seems to me to be a set of ideas that I can see in that interview data. Where's my evidence? Well, it's a sister. She always makes a save to buy our own books. We're not getting from the library. We're not just reading the textbook from school. She makes a save to buy her own books. She's helping us save and use our money in a smart way. Okay, I'm not going to be able to say these discourses are there on the basis of this tiny little bit of data. I'm going to have to analyze a lot more data, different people speaking, whatever, to identify these discourses. But at the moment, that's what I'm seeing in this interview. And I'm also seeing a set of ideas. I've called it Discourse 3. It's the reading is enjoyable. It's not like, oh, reading is studying. Reading is the school textbook and I've got to do my homework. It's like reading something I like doing. So the sister encourages them to pick out books that we like. Okay? So just to recap, remember, I'm using the concept in my theory of culture. Culture, which is beliefs, a belief system, but this belief system, it works as discourses, these sets of ideas that hang out together and you can analyze them in language. Okay? Right, so now I've looked at 2 of the 3 concepts in my data. I've looked at agency and I've looked at culture. So I'm going to now look for the 3rd concept, and that is structure. And remember, a structure is a mechanism that gives access to the goods of the world. Okay, so it's exactly the same bit of data, and this time I've used goods. I've used green to code what I'm seeing. Okay, I'm coding there, and I explain why. We usually buy books. I've coded my sister, this idea of buying books. This is Book Bargain, the bookshop. I think it's Bargain Books he was talking about, as I said. I've coded a cute little sibling moment to structure. She's helping us save and use our money in a smart way. Now, why have I done it like that? Let me show how it comes out. I'm seeing the family or the household as a structure, which is regulating access to the goods of the world. Now, in this particular study, reading is a good. If you can read, you can pass your exams, you can go to university, you can get a good job. If you can't read, you're not going to be able to do that, are you? You're not even going to be able to get matric, finish school, let alone go to university. So in this data, what I'm seeing is the family regulating access, is actually promoting access to the good of reading. Okay, so there's all this stuff about the sister. The sister's very influential in this young man's life. And they've got this cute little sibling moment. Can you imagine them all? I don't know how many children there were, but the cute little sibling moment in the bookshop where they all have to choose their books and pay for them. Okay? So I'm seeing the family or household as a structure that in terms of this piece of research, this study, it's regulating access to the good of reading. Okay? Another thing, of course, is in the second row, finance or access to money, because they talk about buying books, right? We usually buy books. The system makes us buy our own books. She's helping us save and use our money in a smart way. So that this isn't a family that's desperately poor, because they do have disposable income. They can go to bargain books and they can buy books. They can save money. So this isn't a family that's going hungry. This is a family that has access to finance, the monetary system. Okay. Social class. I think this is related to that. They're not the poorest of the poor, this family. Why? Why am I saying they're of a socio-economic status that it's not rich, but it's reasonably okay? We buy books, makes us buy our own books. She's helping us save and use our own money. They're not desperately poor. Okay. I've missed putting something in this table. Do you remember I coded bargain book bargain? Okay. I should have put geography down here in this last row. Geography is structure. The very fact that this young man lives in a town, this family, they live in a town, Makanda, and Makanda's got a shopping mall. That means that they could go to bargain books and they could buy the books. If they were living in a small village in the middle of the Transkei, there would be no bargain books to go and get the books in. Okay, so I could put down there geography, because geography is functioning as a structure, which in this particular case is giving them access to books. Okay, so what I've now done with that same tiny extract of data, I've looked for structure. So I've used my three concepts, structure, culture, and agency. I've been through that little bit of data and I've coded, I've analysed for it. So what can I see? Remember, I'm using my theory to see things I wouldn't otherwise see. So in this little extract, I'm seeing the sister exercising her agency, the powers and properties that the theorist, Margaret Archer, says she possesses to promote reading. She's not a teacher. I can't remember what job she did. The interview tells you somewhere else, because my student asks this young man what his sister does. But she's exercising her powers and properties to promote reading amongst her brothers and sisters. Okay. I'm also seeing that the family, as a group of agents, has access to money. The children have pocket money, don't they? Because they save their money. So I'm seeing the family able to draw on money, on the financial system in this reading story, how this young man got to read. Okay. And I'm also seeing that reading, saving, and buying books is valued in the household. Okay. So my theory is allowing me to see all that in that tiny little bit of data. And if I then expand on that more broadly, and I admit that I can write this slide because I know the rest of the data, because I supervise the thesis, you can start to say, well, the home matters when it comes to reading. It's not all about school. It's not just about the teachers in the school teaching learners to read. It's what happens at home that's also important. But the social status of the home matters. Because in the poorest homes, there might not be books. In this home, they had enough money to go and buy books. But at the same time, it's not only about money in the home, it's about what money is valued as bringing. So in this case, you don't use the money to buy, I don't know what, alcohol or more data. You can't use your money to buy a book in Bargain Books, a paper book, bring it home. So it's about money, but it's about what you use the money for that's important. Having a key agent like the sister in the home to promote reading matters. Now, what's also important is that those observations which come out of my data analysis, I could connect all this up here. I could connect that to other studies. I can connect it to global studies. Okay? I can connect it to global research that shows that the home of origin matters in promoting success at school and university. So I analyze my data using Archer, but I can, because of my reading of the literature, I can connect it to the wider research arena. What was surprising in my students' data, and it surprised her, it surprised me, was she thought, because this was a really poorly performing school in Makanda, in Joseph, because it was really a bad school. I mean, a school that didn't send many students to Rhodes University. She thought that she wouldn't see this. She thought that she wouldn't see people in the home promoting reading. She's got another young man in her study, and he describes his father reading the dictionary to him from a very early age. And this young man, he had a fantastic vocabulary. And in fact, the other learners in the school all kept telling him to stop talking in such a fancy way. But this young man had really fantastic vocabulary. In his house, they only had a dictionary. They didn't have any other books. But the father, every single night, he read the dictionary to the child. And the child picked up all these words in English. And the child used these words. Now he was a learner in the school. So the study, the data, really made my student think, well, this isn't as I expected. Because what she was ultimately thinking was, maybe you've got to set up all these sort of support structures for the home. And in fact, that's what community engagement does at Rhodes. They have all sorts of things which try to get caregivers in the home involved in reading. But what her study did was it revealed that lots of people in very poor homes or homes that she considered poor, she was a Black woman, but she was working as a librarian in one of the best schools in town, that actually this stuff was going on, but we hadn't anticipated it. So her study made a difference in that respect. So what I hope I've done, and I'll stop and I'll really let us have a discussion. We've got 25 minutes if you want. I hope I've shown you how you use the concepts in a theory and you just go in at a piece of data. If I could say another thing, it's don't be scared of doing a preliminary analysis. You know, you're going to have to do more than one analysis. You're going to have to do it again. So why not code it? Just go for it. When you come back again, you might see things differently. That's fine. I saw things I hadn't seen before when I looked again. So it's fine to do that. But what I hope I've shown you is how you need to use the concepts in the theory, identify those concepts in your data. And I looked for agency, structure, and culture. And then you need to start connecting them up using your theory. One last point, you can use NVivo or other software, but often you can manage without this. You don't have to use Atlas, whatever it's called, Atlas DL or NVivo. You can manage without it. as I did with my simple tables, okay, you could do something like that. You just have to be careful that you keep them neat, and you save everything as you go along, obviously. Okay, I'm going to stop. And I'm going to invite you to talk to me, ask questions, do whatever share your own experiences. Let's begin with questions. Well, you must have some. Remember, no question is stupid. There's a hand. Christie.
Hi everyone. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, it's a pleasure to be here today, and thank you for the wonderful presentation. So my question is, I did observe that from your explanation, what you would normally do would be what we've been told is a deductive coding, because you are working with concepts that you have extracted from your theory, and you are applying this directly to your data, as opposed to going in blindly and then trying to just pick out whatever comes from the data. So am I correct?
Yeah, that's the way. Yeah, I'm working for a particular position. You can do grounded theory, where you build the theory as you go along. You can do that.
Okay.
You can.
Okay, and also
I work in a position where you come in with the theory, with the theoretical framework, and then you use that with your data.
Okay. So sorry if I may add, it looks like you're going straight into like analysis, or you're doing them hand in hand. As you're coding, you are analyzing.
I don't know. I can't help doing it. I mean, I find it very difficult just to code. I never, maybe it's because I know the theory very well. I don't know. And remember, I'm quite experienced as a researcher. I can't help doing it as I go along. But I'd encourage you not to forget the relationships between your theory. I mean, maybe if I go back to my screen, okay, what you won't get to, you won't get to that as quickly as I got to it. All right?
Yes.
Get to that. I got to that because I could bring up I knew the study, and I've done a lot of work in this area. So I got to that more quickly. You won't get to that as I did today, but you could have got to that possibly as you went along. Okay.
Oh, okay.
I think you might have got to that.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Anybody else?
Yes. Hi, Chrissie.
Hi, Sundani.
Sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand, so excuse me for just jumping in. Thank you so much for the presentation. I was just wondering, wanted to get your thoughts on something. How many theories is too much to include in a research paper? Because I think often as a student, the temptation is you hear all these wonderful theories in your field, and the temptation can be to include maybe one or two. But in your experience, is it, how much is too many? Essentially.
Yeah, it's like asking how long is a piece of string. Look, I think the best studies are sharp and focused and elegant. If one theory will do the work, why use two? If one theory will allow you to see what you want to see, why use two? Don't bring in extra theory for the sake of bringing in extra theory because the theories exist. Rather, use that one theory really, really well and that's a great piece of research. I personally, as an examiner, would prefer that a great mishmash of theories, because you're using that theory really rigorously and elegantly and sharply. It's like a surgeon with a scalpel rather than a butcher with a, whatever butchers use, a hack thing. It's doing that rather than bringing in this whole host of theories for the sake of bringing them in. Just one more word about the theories that you bring in. If you do bring more than one theory in, one of the questions you have to ask yourself is, are they friends or are they enemies? Are they consonant? Do they agree with each other at the level of how they understand reality and how it can be known, for example? Okay. As an examiner of PhDs, I can see it in the literature review. People open those sets of brackets and throw all those names in the brackets. And I think, oh my goodness, you've got a war going on in those brackets. Because the people that they're referencing in the one set of brackets are all fighting with each other from different positions on what, say, learning is or what knowledge is, and so on and so on. So I think the key question is, if I'm using more than one theory, are they going to get along together? Or are they going to fight? Because if you've got fighting theories, you're not going to be able to, they won't let you analyze. They'll each be pushing you in different directions to see different things. So yeah, my advice is keep it as simple as you can. If you can do it with one theory, and that really is a good pair of glasses, do it, just go for it and use it really, really well, rigorously, dig deep. But don't be seduced by the idea that the more theory I use, the better my thesis will be. That's my position.
Thank you for that. Makes sense.
Anybody else? Christie, that's an old hand, hey? I think so. I'm going to lower it.
Yes, it's an old hand, sorry.
Okay. Anybody else? Let me ask you another question. If you were put on the spot now, and I said to you, okay, what theory are you using? And what are the concepts in the theory? Would you be able to tell me? Because if you couldn't do that, or maybe you haven't found your theory yet, but if you have found a theory, and I hope you have found a theory if you're now thinking about analyzing data, can you tell me what concepts you should be looking for? Because if you can't, maybe that's something for you to go away and think about tonight and write down what concepts you should be looking for, and then write down what the relationships are between those concepts that you should be looking for in your data, because that would be a really excellent way to go and look at your first piece of data with that in your head, because you know what you're looking for. So if you don't know, homework for tonight. Anybody else?
I do have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Rollins.
Some of us are using conceptual framework.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, it's just a mere concept. Now, should I also identify concepts from other concepts?
No. Well, yes and no. Okay. You've got a conceptual framework.
Yes.
Tell me, which discipline are you in? Which subject?
It's educational management.
Management.
And I have the concept of democracy.
Okay. That's okay. You've got your concepts then.
Mhm.
Remember when I talked about culture,
Mhm.
right? And I said in social realist research, culture
Mhm.
is usually discursively constituted. And then I
Mhm.
moved on to discoursive. So
Mhm.
in a way, you can see there, the concept of culture led me to another concept of discourse.
Mhm.
So if you like, culture is subordinate, superordinate, and discourse is subordinate. So those two are linked.
Mm.
Can you see?
No, I can see.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So that's perfectly possible.
Mm. Thanks.
But usually, you know, you do have to explain the relationships between concepts.
Mm.
Anyone else? Okay, well, I won't keep you if nobody's got any more questions. I'm always happy to answer an email. My email is
Sorry again. I want to know the techniques. If we have techniques behind, okay, working with concepts, connecting them, or how should one determine the connection or the link between these two concepts or three concepts? Should one look for the similarities, or what is the technique, the best way to do that?
well, I've been really interested to see how you're using conceptual frameworks in your actual research, because I suspect that there are links between those concepts, even though you're not calling them theories. But you'd have to use, I mean, can you give me an example of the concepts that you're using?
I have the concept of democracy.
Yeah.
I have the concept of learner participation, or I have the concept of participation. I have the concept of learner, I have the concept of decentralization and school-based management.
Okay. Okay. So you can see how all that works together then, can't you, in a way? You can see how using democratic principles in school-based management will involve more learner participation. And what was the third one? What was the third one?
Decentralization.
Decentralization. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you have this management spread throughout the school. It's not only in the head teacher's office. And somewhere in that set of ideas is the idea that that's a better form of management. So they are linked together. There are links between them. They don't just sit there in an isolated fashion. There's a theory behind them, Rollins. Yeah? Whether or not you're calling it a theoretical framework, there are links between those. Okay.
No, I can see the link.
All right. Lydia, you've got your hand up. Lydia? Is that an accident, Lydia? Or are you struggling to unmute?
Okay. Sorry for that. I would love to know the difference between theoretical framework and analytical. I'm coming from science education field, and for us, we have the theoretical framework and analytical. Now, since for the theory, that's where we have now concepts, I have to identify now in my data. Now I'm failing now to know as to where now do I bring in the analytical framework? Do I now have to find out what other concepts in the analytical framework which are linking with the concepts in the theory, or how do I balance the two?
Oh, I don't know. You know, people have different definitions of these things. You're science education, are you? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Science education. I think your analytical framework is how you operationalize your theoretical framework, how you actually do it in practice in your data, to analyze your data. It's how you operationalize it. Okay, so in your proposal, what are you doing, PhD or master's? Masters. Okay, so in your proposal, you must have had a section called research design or research methods. Yeah, and in that section, what I think you probably said was how you would analyze your data. Yeah, the how is your analytical framework. Your theoretical framework it is there because you've presumably got a theory section in your proposal. So your theoretical framework will give you the concepts, but your analytical framework is the how. Okay. But people use those words in very different ways. Yeah. And the whole research field, it's a minefield because often people are talking about the same thing, but they're using different words.
I see.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
I'm just going to close off by saying a couple of things. One is, don't be afraid of your data. And don't be afraid that you can't code it. I've had students who've sat looking at an interview transcript or whatever it is they need to analyze, and they've been paralyzed. And why have they been paralyzed? It's because they doubted themselves. They were scared to actually do it. All I can say is that everybody makes mistakes. Everybody gets it wrong. You won't get a perfect analysis the first time through. You will struggle. I continue to struggle, so you will struggle. So the best advice I can give you is sit there, be brave, and do it. Do it. Okay? Do it, and then walk away. You're going to have to look at it again. And when you look at it again, and it might mean going back after you've done, say, another interview. So you do one interview, you just have a go at coding it, then you go and do another one. But then you go back to the first interview. And when you go back to the first interview, you'll see it differently. So when you write about this in your thesis, you'll talk about coding being reiterative. Reiterative. You do it over and over and over again until eventually, and you will see it, you see the patterns come very, very clearly. You will see those patterns. You will see those connections, those explanations. But you won't begin to see them if you sit there scared of your data and say to yourself, oh, am I doing this right? No, I'm not doing it right. So I'll go and have another cup of coffee. Do it. Do it. Then go, leave it, go and do another different bit of data, go back and do it again. Reiterative, going through it over and over again. All researchers have that, do that. All researchers have dilemmas. And as a supervisor, all I could say is that I'm happy if my student codes and has a really honest attempt at coding, even if I can see things that the student doesn't see or hasn't seen, or see things differently to the student, I still welcome the coding, because what I would say is, oh, well, you might want to look at this, but go back and have another look. So please, please, please don't sit there paralyzed. Don't be scared of your data. Jump in, you can do it, and you will get there. But you just have to sit with it over and over again. And you know what? Someday you'll sit there and you'll think, that's it. I've got it. And that's the most wonderful feeling. So keep at it and you'll get there. Okay. Asipe, if there are no more questions, I think that's me done.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Chrissie, for that wonderful presentation. And I mean, I echo what everyone has said, especially for me, the takeaway is how we often get stuck in data analysis because we think we need to scan through for themes, and that can actually lead to loss of the data itself through that skimming for themes, but rather the relationship of concepts, especially with the understanding of one's theory. So thank you very much for that. To everyone who has asked for the recording, I'm in a process of uploading all recordings on YouTube. But if you need this one urgently, you can email me and I'll send you the recording. It will be readily available after this session. Please do not forget to evaluate us more. And once again, thank you very much for the engagements as well as the people who are here. Thank you so much for your presence and for your contribution. Once again, thank
Can I
you so
just
much.
say one thing, SCP? Similarly, you sent me a direct message. Can you email me that message? I'm not going to be able to answer you now, but I will answer on email, okay? Anybody else who sent me a message that I missed, email c.bowie@ru. I will answer you, okay? So similarly, give me your question on email. Okay, thanks, SCP.
Thank you very much. And if you didn't get the email, you can send it to me and I'll pass it over to Chrissie. Thank you so much. Have a great evening further. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye. Bye.